Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. We are here to talk to Kevin Hatchard again. He was so kind as to give us a couple of extra minutes to talk about not Alexander Nubel, but that other signing coming from the Bundesliga. Somebody who most of you will be familiar with already, maybe from watching him at Dortmund, but probably not that because he didn't play much at Dortmund, at least not last season, Kevin. But of course, he did play a decent amount of games over the years for the Turkish national team. And that man is, of course, Salih Özcan joining Beşiktaş. He's arriving as we are recording this. The club announced his arrival later today. Kevin, Salih Özcan, a player that hasn't played much at Dortmund. What would you say is the main reason for that?
Just the quality they have. They've got guys like Sabitzer, they've got Mecha, they've got a lot of depth in that midfield area. And so he was always likely to be the odd man out. Didn't quite happen for him at Wolfsburg either. He only had a handful of appearances for them, not in the season just gone, but the one before. So I don't think it's necessarily a black mark against the player. I just think it's about that depth. And just not many opportunities. And also, the thing about Niko Kovac is that once he makes up his mind in terms of who his kind of main guys are going to be, it's quite difficult to shift that perception. But I think what you've got is an experienced guy, a team player, not a goal scorer. We know that. He's not going to be banging him in left, right, and centre unless he has a significant change to his game. But he covers the ground well. He does the dirty work well. And he's a solid guy. And as you say, he's played at national team level. I think when he burst through at Köln, he kind of was the guy that he would become in the sense that he was an energy guy. Again, wasn't going to get many goals. But somebody that would give it to the more technically gifted players, but break up play and get things moving. So, yeah, again, we talked about Nubel and it being quite an eye-catching signing. This is not a player that gets the pulses racing, but what he is the kind of guy you probably need to be successful. Somebody who's going to put those tackles in, somebody who's going to have that physical edge. As I recall, he used to be a wrestler, actually. He used to be at a wrestling club in Ehrenfeld, which is where he's from in Cologne. So he's got that physical ability. I think it's an interesting signing.
He is, of course, somebody that, like you said, is someone you compare with a more technical player. Obviously, Orkun Kökçü was our big eye-catching signing last season, the captain of the club now. They have shown in recent history that they have good chemistry at the Turkish national team. When Turkey lost 6-0 to Spain and Montella decided, okay, we're going away to Spain now. This is a loss anyway. I'll just field the B team. Orkun Kökçü and Salih Özcan played brilliantly in that match together. Hakan Çalhanoğlu was rested and other players were rested, and they were, sent out to slaughter, so to speak, and came away with a 2-2 draw away in Spain. And then most recently at the World Cup, after the A team fumbled it in the first two matches. Again, the Salih Özcan Orkun Kökçü partnership did really well against the United States. Do you think that would you say that he's maybe a water carrier, to put it, which of course with all due respect, but we've had players in the past like an Atiba Hutchinson. Those players are extremely important, but as you say, they're not eye-catching, but they are the glue that kind of puts the puzzle together, so to speak.
Yeah, somebody has to carry the water.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you have to have somebody in there to do that. And yeah, he's the kind of guy that builds the stage. He doesn't perform on the stage, but he's the guy that builds it.
Yeah,
and make sure the lights are all in the right place, and everything goes smoothly. So that's what you need. You need guys in there to be reliable. I think of somebody like, for example, it's not a direct comparison, but like a Khan Ayhan, somebody like that, right? Who is a mentality guy, is a bit of a strong man. I just think he can do that role and let the more talented players shine. And mentality is important.
Yeah, for sure.
And look, you wouldn't be part of the Dortmund squad. You wouldn't be getting Dortmund wages if you were no good. It's not like he can't trap a ball. It's not like he can't play a pass. You know, we're talking about a good player. It's just he is somebody who complements more technically gifted players in the team, but you need them.
Yeah. And of course, we talked about it in our Alexander Nubel video already. We talked about Vincenzo Italiano. But Italiano is somebody that loves intensity, high press. A lot of physical commitment is required from players. Of course, he's coming from a club that is known to be this gegenpress monster. Maybe even the innovators of it over the last 10 years or so. Of course, there's been the rise of the Red Bull clubs, who also are huge into the whole gegenpress thing. But do you think that that he fits Italiano's game as well, Salih Özcan?
Yeah, I think that physicality and mentality is very important. I think you need that in Italiano's teams. And weirdly, actually, he came into a Dortmund team that really dialed that down under Kovac, which has been one of the big kind of sticking points with Kovac, because his results at Dortmund have been very good, but it's not the style that Dortmund fans are used to seeing. It isn't that full gas kind of gegenpressing style. It is a bit more circumspected, a bit more controlled. So that kind of lends itself to him not necessarily being in the team as well. But I think also, you know, just to bring it back to where we started, if you've got Marcel Sabitzer, who's a lock for Austria, very experienced player.
Fantastic player.
You got Felix Metscher, who's German international, playing very well. If you got those guys ahead of you, it's very, very tough.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's tough to suddenly appear. Cardi Chukwuemeka came in. I know he's more attack-minded, but that was one of those positions that suddenly disappeared. So, yeah, then that does make it tough. So, as I say, that it's no reflection on him, I don't think, that he only got a handful of games for Dortmund.
Yeah, and maybe it isn't the coincidence as well, because before Niko Kovac came in, I think he came the season before last, right?
Yeah.
And that's really when you see...
Partway through.
Yeah, and that's really when you see his minutes starting to wane. That's also when he was loaned out to Wolfsburg in January. So before that, I mean, he played 2 seasons for Dortmund, and he played 36 and 34 games respectively. I don't think he was ever truly a main guy, but he was somebody who was always in the mix, always getting his minutes, and that's completely gone now. And that's something that's worried Besiktas fans a little bit. We've been pursuing him for, I would say, since the summer, at least for a year. We tried really hard in January as well, but he didn't want to forego his, as you mentioned, Royal Dortmund wages. He wanted a compensation, so it was put on hold until the summer. Now he's signing for for Turkish standards a relatively modest wage of 2 million guaranteed and 1 million signing bonus, which supposedly he was asking for 3.5 million in January and even this summer, but apparently they managed to convince him. Yeah, that's something that worried Beşiktaş fans, I think, seeing, oh, this guy only played, I don't know what it was, 60 odd minutes this season for Dortmund, which is really quite mind-boggling. It was also a criticism for why is he even getting called up to the national team still by a lot of people in Turkey. But he wasn't the only one, obviously. There were a lot of players that got called up, including Kaan Ayhan, who you mentioned, who barely got playing time this season. But are you able to maybe put Beşiktaş fans' minds at ease a little bit? That do you really think that the issue was Niko Kovac not really needing that type of brand of midfielder, because, like you said, he dialed down on the whole gegenpressing style, and maybe Özcan simply didn't really fit his system, on top, of course, of what you mentioned, Sabitzer and other players that are just, ahead of him.
I think there were just better players ahead of him, and there's no shame in that. It's just the case. I think it's more look at the fact he was signed by Dortmund in the first place. There was clearly a feeling at the time that he was somebody that could thrive at Dortmund. And as you mentioned, he did have spells where he was getting minutes, he was getting games, but he's just been squeezed out, and that happens. That happens at clubs all the time. Yep. So I think this is somebody who should be hungry to impress, should be hungry to be a regular starter. He's sorted the negotiations now. And I think, if he gets a regular run in the team, I'm sure he'll show his worth.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for watching. And hopefully, Salih Özcan will make true on that, will work hard and want to impress and maybe earn his permanent spot in the starting 11 of the Turkish national team. Who knows? Because that other number 6, Ismail Yüksek, isn't exactly playing much at Fenerbahce. So really, he should have a chance at playing for the Turkish national team as well. Kevin, thank you again for joining us and giving us your time and your insights on Salih Özcan and Alexander Lubel. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that notification bell, of course. Bye-bye.